What happens when America's most beloved weatherman goes head-to-head with one of the most controversial figures in modern royalty? The answer is a television moment that nobody saw coming, and one that's already being called the most explosive interview in morning show history. Before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this whole situation. Trust me, you're going to have opinions. The Today Show studios were buzzing with the usual morning energy. Crew members hustled between cameras, producers whispered into headsets, and the familiar glow of studio lights bathed everything in that signature morning television warmth. Meghan Markle sat in the guest chair, her posture perfect, her outfit carefully chosen to project both approachability and sophistication. Across from her, Roker settled into his seat with the ease of someone who'd done this thousands of times before. The interview started pleasantly enough. Al smiled his trademark smile and began with what seemed like a softball question. "So Meghan, you've been living a more private life lately. What brings you back into the public eye today?" Meghan returned the smile, but there was something calculated behind it. "Well, Al, I think it's important to use whatever platform you have to speak truth. And there are truths that haven't been told yet, truths that people deserve to hear." Al's smile remained, but his eyes sharpened slightly. He'd been doing this long enough to recognize when someone was about to take a conversation in an unexpected direction. "That's interesting. Are we talking about new revelations, or are we revisiting old territory?" The studio suddenly felt a few degrees cooler. Meghan's smile didn't waver, but her voice took on an edge. "I think that's a dismissive way to frame it. Al, when people are still suffering, when there are still systemic issues that haven't been addressed, it's not old territory. It's ongoing reality." Al leaned forward slightly, his professional demeanor intact but his tone becoming more direct. "I'm not trying to dismiss anything, Meghan. I'm trying to understand what we're actually here to discuss, because the pre-interview and what you're saying now seem to be two different conversations." "That's because people try to control the narrative before it even starts," Meghan replied, her voice steady but growing firmer. "They want to put you in a box, make you discuss only what's comfortable for them. But real conversations aren't always comfortable, are they?" A producer off camera shifted nervously. This wasn't going according to plan. Al noticed the movement, but kept his focus on Meghan. "You're absolutely right. Real conversations aren't always comfortable, but they should be honest. So let me ask you directly, what is it you want to say that you feel you haven't been allowed to say?" Meghan paused, and in that pause, you could almost hear the audience at home leaning closer to their screens. "I want to talk about the double standards. I want to talk about how when I speak about my experiences, I'm called difficult, but when others do the same, they're called brave. I want to talk about how this very show has covered my story versus how you've covered others in similar positions." Al's expression shifted. The warmth that typically defined his on-screen presence cooled noticeably. "Now hold on a second. If you're suggesting that this show, or that I personally, have treated you unfairly in our coverage, I think that's something we need to address head-on." "I'm not suggesting, I'm stating," Meghan said, her voice cutting through the studio air like a blade. "I've watched the clips. I've seen the commentary, and there's a very clear pattern in how my story is framed compared to others." The camera operators exchanged glances. This was unprecedented territory for a morning show interview. Al took a breath, clearly weighing his next words carefully. "Meghan, we cover stories based on facts, on what's publicly known, and on what sources tell us. If you have specific examples of where we've gotten something wrong, I'm genuinely interested to hear them. But making broad accusations about bias without specifics puts everyone in an impossible position." Meghan's laugh was sharp. "Specifics. You want specifics? Let's talk about the interview you did 3 months ago, where you spent 15 minutes sympathizing with someone who was caught in a scandal that was objectively worse than anything I've been accused of. Let's talk about how their struggles were treated with kid gloves, while my every move is dissected and criticized." Al's jaw tightened visibly. "I'm going to stop you right there. First of all, every interview we do is approached individually based on the circumstances, the person, and the information we have at that time. Second, and I mean this with all due respect, you're comparing very different situations as if they're identical. That's not fair to anyone involved." "Not fair?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "What's not fair is being told to stay silent while people write whatever narrative they want about you. What's not fair is being labeled as difficult for doing exactly what powerful people do every day without consequence. The producers were frantically signaling for a commercial break, but Al waved them off. He'd been in broadcasting long enough to know that cutting away now would only make things worse. Meghan, nobody is telling you to stay silent. You've had multiple platforms to share your story. You've done interviews, you've had documentaries, you've had countless opportunities to speak your truth. What people are questioning isn't your right to speak. It's the consistency of the story and the targets of your criticism. Meghan's eyes flashed. So now you're questioning my honesty. I'm questioning the framing, Al replied evenly. There's a difference. When you paint yourself as someone who's been silenced while simultaneously having access to some of the biggest media platforms in the world, it creates a disconnect that people struggle with. That's not bias. That's basic observation. The studio had gone eerily quiet, except for the hum of equipment and the occasional whisper from crew members, who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Meghan said, her voice taut with controlled emotion. The way you're speaking to me right now, the skepticism in every word. Do you honestly think you'd take this tone with someone else in my position? Al's patience, legendary among his colleagues, was clearly being tested. I take this tone with anyone who comes on this show and makes serious allegations without backing them up. That's not about who you are. That's about journalistic integrity. And frankly, I've earned the right to ask tough questions. I've been doing this for decades with respect and fairness to everyone who sits in that chair. Respect. Meghan's voice carried a bitter edge now. Is it respectful to imply someone is lying? Is it respectful to question their experiences when you haven't walked a single step in their shoes? I'm not implying anything, Al said firmly. I'm asking for clarity. There's a huge difference between sharing your experience and making accusations about how others have covered your story. One is personal testimony, the other invites scrutiny. If you're going to sit here and tell me and our audience that this show has been unfair to you, then you need to be prepared to have that conversation with evidence, not just feelings. The word feelings landed like a bomb. Meghan's expression hardened into something unreadable. And there it is, the classic dismissal, reducing someone's legitimate concerns to just feelings, as if emotions aren't valid responses to real situations. That's not what I said, and you know it, Al countered, his voice rising slightly for the first time. Don't twist my words to fit your narrative. I said evidence, not feelings. Because when you make accusations about bias and unfair treatment, those are serious claims that require serious substantiation. Meghan stood up slightly in her chair, her body language shifting from poised to combative. You want substantiation. Fine. Let's talk about the segment that aired 6 weeks ago, where your colleague spent 4 minutes speculating about my motives for attending a charity event. 4 minutes of questioning whether I was genuinely there to help or just seeking attention. Now tell me, Al, when was the last time you did that to any other public figure doing charity work? Al didn't miss a beat. If you're referring to the segment I think you're referring to, that discussion was prompted by sources close to the organization who questioned the arrangement. We were reporting what we'd been told by people directly involved. That's called journalism. Sources close to the organization, Meghan repeated, her tone dripping with skepticism. Anonymous sources, with axes to grind, are given more credibility than the person actually doing the work. Do you see the problem here? Do you see how that's been weaponized against me specifically? Anonymous sources are a cornerstone of journalism, Al said, his voice steady but firm, have been for decades. And they're used in coverage of everyone, not just you. The difference is, most people don't come on national television and accuse the journalists of being part of some conspiracy against them. I never said conspiracy, Meghan shot back. But there's something happening here, whether it's conscious or not. There's a pattern of coverage that paints me in the worst possible light, while giving others every benefit of the doubt. And when I point that out, I'm told I'm being paranoid or difficult. A senior producer in the control room was making throat-cutting gestures, but Al was too deep into the exchange to notice or care. Meghan, let me be crystal clear about something. My job, our job here at this show, is to report the news and conduct interviews with integrity. We don't wake up in the morning thinking about how to make anyone look bad. We cover what's newsworthy based on the information available to us. If you've had negative coverage, maybe, just maybe, it's worth examining whether some of that stems from the choices you've made rather than some imagined bias. The studio went dead silent. Even the technical crew stopped moving. Meghan's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, anger, disbelief. "So, you're saying I deserve the treatment I've gotten? That I've brought this on myself?" "I'm saying that actions have consequences," Al replied, not backing down an inch. "When you go on international television and make serious allegations about people and institutions, when you grant selective interviews that tell only part of the story, when you and your representatives put out statements that contradict previous statements, people are going to ask questions. That's not persecution, that's accountability." Meghan's voice went quiet, which somehow made her words even more impactful. "You have no idea what it's like. You sit here in your comfortable position, beloved by everyone, never having to question whether the criticism you face is based on who you are versus what you do. You've never had to wonder if the color of your skin plays a role in how people perceive every single thing you say or do." Al's expression shifted, a flicker of something, perhaps hurt, perhaps anger, crossing his features. "Don't you dare," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Don't you dare suggest that I don't understand discrimination, or that I've never faced prejudice. I've been in this industry for over 40 years, and I've dealt with things you can't imagine, but I didn't use them as a shield against legitimate criticism." The comparison hung in the air between them, combustible and dangerous. Meghan leaned forward. "I'm not using anything as a shield. I'm pointing out a reality that's uncomfortable for people to hear. And the fact that you're getting this defensive about it kind of proves my point, doesn't it?" "Defensive?" Al's voice rose again. "You come onto this show, you make broad accusations about our coverage, you question our integrity, and you expect what? That we'll just nod and apologize? That we'll pretend that everyone who's ever criticized you must be wrong because you've decided they are? That's not how this works." "Maybe that's exactly the problem," Meghan countered. "Maybe the way this works is broken. Maybe the system that you're defending is the same system that needs to be challenged and changed." Al shook his head, clearly frustrated. "You can't just throw around words like system and broken every time someone disagrees with you or questions your narrative. That's intellectually lazy, and it diminishes real systemic issues that actually exist." "Intellectually lazy?" Meghan's voice went up an octave. "I have lived through experiences that you're dismissing as narrative. I've dealt with harassment, threats, lies printed as facts, and coordinated campaigns to destroy my reputation. But sure, let's call that intellectually lazy when I try to talk about it." "I'm not dismissing your experiences," Al said, emphasizing each word carefully. "I'm challenging your conclusion that every negative piece of coverage or every tough question is evidence of bias against you. Sometimes people face criticism because they've done things that warrant criticism. That's not bias, that's cause and effect." Meghan stood up fully now, though she remained near her chair. "This interview is over. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured about cause and effect by someone who clearly has no interest in actually listening to what I'm saying." Al remained seated, but his voice carried across the studio with authority. "You're welcome to leave, Meghan. But before you do, I want to make something clear to you and to everyone watching. This show has given you a platform this morning. We invited you here in good faith to have a conversation. If that conversation got heated, it's because you came in making accusations, and I responded to them honestly. That's what real dialogue looks like, even when it's uncomfortable. Real dialogue." Meghan's laugh was bitter. "This isn't dialogue, this is an ambush. And I think your audience is smart enough to see exactly what's happening here." "What's happening here?" Al said, rising to his feet now as well. "Is that you're learning that not everyone is going to handle you with kid gloves. Some of us have been around long enough to ask the hard questions and push back when things don't add up. If you can't handle that, then maybe you should reconsider doing interviews at all." The crew members looked at each other in stunned silence. This had gone so far beyond the normal bounds of morning television that no one quite knew how to react. A makeup artist near the edge of the set had her hand over her mouth. One of the camera operators had actually stopped filming, seemingly forgetting his job in the shock of the moment before his colleagues frantically gestured at him to keep rolling. "You know what, Al?" Meghan's voice was shaking now, whether from anger or something else was hard to tell. "I came here thinking that maybe, just maybe, this would be different. That someone with your experience and your own history might understand. But I see now that was naive of me. You're just like all the rest, protecting the status quo, protecting your comfortable position and attacking anyone who dares to challenge it." Al's jaw set in a hard line. "I'm not attacking you. I'm disagreeing with you. And if you've gotten to a point where you can't tell the difference between those two things, that's something you need to work on, not blame on everyone else. Meghan grabbed her microphone and began removing it, her hands moving with sharp, decisive movements. This is exactly what I mean. Everything gets turned back on me. My concerns become my problem. My experiences become my inability to handle criticism. It's gaslighting at an institutional level. That word gaslighting seemed to be the final straw for Al. His voice, when he spoke, carried decades of professional authority and personal conviction. No, Meghan. What's gaslighting is coming onto a show, making serious allegations. And then when those allegations are challenged with actual questions, claiming that the questions themselves are proof of the very bias you're alleging. That's circular reasoning, and it's unfair to everyone involved in this conversation, including the millions of people watching who deserve better than talking points and deflection. I'm not deflecting, Meghan said, her voice rising to match his intensity. I'm trying to have an honest conversation about something that matters, but you're so invested in defending the institution that you can't even hear what I'm saying. I hear you perfectly, Al shot back. You're saying that you believe you've been treated unfairly by the media. You're saying that you think there's bias in the coverage of your story? I hear all of that. What I'm saying is that hearing your perspective doesn't mean I have to agree with your conclusions, especially when those conclusions paint everyone who's ever questioned you as part of some coordinated effort against you. A production assistant approached cautiously, trying to signal that they needed to cut to commercial, but both Al and Meghan ignored her. The young woman backed away slowly, realizing this was beyond her pay grade to interrupt. So what is it you want from me? Meghan demanded. You want me to say I'm wrong? You want me to apologize for speaking up? You want me to just accept whatever treatment comes my way and smile through it? Al's voice dropped, becoming more measured, but no less intense. What I want is for you to take some responsibility. Responsibility for your choices. Responsibility for your words. Responsibility for the fact that some of the negative coverage you've received is directly connected to contradictions in your own statements. You can't have it both ways, Meghan. You can't court publicity when it serves you and then cry foul when that same publicity machine turns critical. Court publicity. Meghan's voice was incredulous. You think I wanted any of this? You think I wanted to be tabloid fodder? You think I wanted death threats and racist attacks and having every aspect of my life dissected? Nobody wants that, Al agreed, his tone softening slightly but his resolve remaining firm. But you made choices that put you in the public eye at the highest possible level. And with that level of visibility comes scrutiny. It comes with questions. It comes with skepticism when stories change or when facts don't line up. That's not bias. That's the reality of public life at that altitude. Meghan's microphone was off now, dangling from the wire still clipped to her jacket. You're right about one thing, Al. I did make choices. And one of those choices was to come here today thinking I could have a real conversation. Clearly, I was wrong. You can walk out that door, Al said, gesturing toward the exit. You can leave right now, and this becomes a story about how you couldn't handle tough questions. Or you can sit back down, and we can finish this conversation like adults. Your choice. The challenge hung in the air. For a moment, it seemed like Meghan might actually sit back down. Her hand moved toward the chair. But then she straightened, her expression hardening into something resolute. You know what the real story is, Al? The real story is that I came here offering vulnerability and honesty, and I was met with hostility and dismissiveness. That's the story your viewers are going to remember. If that's how you want to frame it, Al replied, his voice tired now, but still firm. But I think the viewers are smart enough to see what actually happened here. They saw someone make allegations and then get upset when those allegations were questioned. They saw someone play the victim while simultaneously attacking the people trying to have an actual dialogue with them. Play the victim, Meghan repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. There it is again, the dismissal, the reduction of legitimate grievances to performance and manipulation. You know what? I don't need this. I don't need to justify my experiences to you or to anyone else. Then why did you come? Al asked, and there was something genuine in the question beyond the argument, beyond the tension. Why did you agree to this interview if you weren't prepared to engage with pushback? Because that's what interviews are, Meghan. They're not platforms for unchallenged monologues. They're conversations, and conversations involve disagreement sometimes. I came because I thought you would understand, Meghan said quietly, and for the first time, There was something vulnerable in her voice. I thought someone with your background, someone who's faced his own challenges in this industry, might actually get it. But I see now that success makes people forget. It makes them comfortable with systems that they once would have challenged. Al's expression flickered with something. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Don't presume to know my journey or what I remember or forget. And don't use my success as a weapon against me in this argument. I've earned everything I have through hard work and integrity, and I'm not going to apologize for that or pretend that everyone who faces criticism is automatically a victim of injustice. Meghan started walking toward the exit, her heels clicking on the studio floor. This was a mistake, she said, more to herself than to Al. A complete mistake. Al's voice followed her. Meghan, if you walk out of here right now, you're proving every critic who's ever said you can't handle accountability. You're proving that you only want to engage on your terms, with your rules, with no room for disagreement or challenge. She stopped walking, but didn't turn around. And if I stay, she said, her voice carrying back across the studio, I'm submitting myself to more of this, more of being talked down to, more of having my experiences questioned, more of being treated like I'm the problem instead of someone trying to point out the problem. Then maybe that tells you something, Al said. Maybe if every conversation you have ends with you feeling attacked and victimized. The common denominator isn't everyone else. Meghan turned slowly, her face a mask of controlled emotion. You really just said that? On national television, you really just blamed me for the way I've been treated. I'm saying that perception and reality aren't always the same thing, Al responded. I'm saying that sometimes we create narratives in our minds that protect us from uncomfortable truths. And I'm saying that I've watched you do that for years now, and honestly, it's exhausting to witness. The words hit like physical blows. The crew members who'd been watching this unfold with morbid fascination now looked genuinely uncomfortable, as if they were witnessing something too personal, too raw for public consumption. Exhausting, Meghan repeated. My trauma is exhausting for you. My speaking out is exhausting for you. Got it? That's very clear. Your trauma, if that's what it is, deserves to be heard, Al said, and his voice carried a complexity now, frustration mixed with something that might have been genuine concern. But trauma doesn't give you a free pass to make accusations without evidence. It doesn't shield you from accountability for your own actions and choices, and it doesn't mean that everyone who disagrees with you is attacking you. Meghan stood there for what felt like an eternity, the space between her and Al Roker suddenly seeming vast and unbridgeable. Then, quietly but firmly, she said, I want to leave. Now. The cameras stay on, Al said simply. This is live television, and this moment, as uncomfortable as it is part of the public record now. You came on a live show. This is what live means. Then I'm leaving with them on, Meghan said, and there was a finality in her voice, and everyone watching can make up their own minds about what happened here. They will, Al agreed. And Meghan, for what it's worth, I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for. I genuinely do, but you're not going to find it by fighting everyone who doesn't validate your every feeling and claim. Meghan didn't respond. She simply unclipped the microphone wire from her jacket, placed it on the chair she'd been sitting in, and walked toward the studio exit. Her posture was straight, her head high, but there was something defeated in the set of her shoulders. Al remained standing in the center of the studio, watching her go. His expression was complicated, a mixture of frustration, sadness, and something that might have been regret, not for what he'd said, but for how things had unfolded. As Meghan reached the studio door, she paused one final time. Without turning around, she said, You'll edit this to make me look bad. That's what always happens. We don't edit live television, Al replied quietly. What happened here is what happened. No spin, no manipulation. Just a people who couldn't find common ground. So there you have it. One of the most intense moments in morning television history. Two strong personalities, two different perspectives, and absolutely no middle ground. What do you think? Was Al Roker right to push back so hard? Or did he cross a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more stories like this one. And here's my question for you. If you were in that studio, whose side would you have taken and why?